Hello, everybody. You're welcome again onto our conversation with Susanna on the move. Where you're all welcome back to this conversation with me on conscious bias. And today I'm going to run you through the conscious bias framework. Um, we've started already from the last presentation. So what I'm doing today, I'm just going to run us very quickly through the headings and the content, and then we can now sit down and focus and have those difficult conversations around it, and just talk more with regard to each of the content that will be shared today. Again, for those of you that might be joining for the first time, this is Susanna on the Move, hosted by Susuana Olatunji Komolafe. And the whole idea of conscious bias, and that's what we've embarked on, is a new Peruvian uh, conceptual concept, ideology that I'm trying to push to be used within our places of work, in our community, and to be included in our policies, um, to design these around our daily policies and works that we do, and how we allow it to restructure our society in the way we see what is equity, what is inclusion, what is diversity, and how do we re talks about diversity in a different way. How do we talk about equity? How do we talk about inclusion? And what does that really mean in the concept of conscious bias? And that is what the framework is all about. So you're welcome again. And if you're joining or you're watching me for the first time, you need if and you're not following me on LinkedIn, this is an opportunity for you to click the follow button and follow me on LinkedIn. And then for those of you that might have the opportunity to join me on YouTube, this is an opportunity for you to subscribe to my channel on YouTube, which is Susanna on the Move. Thank you for joining, and thank you for liking, thank you for following. I do really appreciate that. Also, just to remind you all, you have an opportunity if you want to join me live in this conversation. You are well invited in to join, and you can also follow me by commenting and sending your own views and ideology around this conversation that we are having. So while we are talking, you can drop comments, you can share your own opinions, and I can respond vividly with that to you, to the audience. So you're all welcome. And while you watch this, I will really encourage each one of us to read the headings. So anytime you have the opportunity to join in to watch this, please always read the headings, because the headings gives you really good content into what the conversation is about, and the story is carrying you along the storyline as well. So please always make effort to read the headings that comes along with this. And those content, those words, they are key, and they are very important as well to us. So you're welcome today to Susanna Conscious Bias Framework. And we've talked about the presentation of the objectives. But what is the objective? The whole idea, the whole objective around this framework, this conscious bias framework. What is the goal for understanding conscious bias framework? So understanding the conscious bias is essential for recognizing and addressing the suit the addressing the subtitles influence that shapes our perceptions and interactions within the diverse communities and in context. We I made mention from previous presentations that we are going to focus on three key aspects, which include the gender, the race, and religion. And those are the areas in which we're going to focus on. We're going to talk. So today's framework is giving you an insight into religious as a bridge builder. So we're talking about religious, how religious serves as a powerful cultural force that shapes our identity. Those are the key things I want you to take away. That religion serves as a powerful cultural force that shapes our identities and values within our community. That's what it does. And we are going to focus basically on we're going to focus really on Christianity and Islam for building bridges. We're going to talk about awareness of religions influence on biases, what those just for us to become aware of how religious does influence our conscious bias and how we can use it to build in building bridges, becoming aware of religious influence on biases and how these can be used to build bridges. We're going to openly name religious influence. We're going to talk openly about how religion influence our decision, how religions, how what are the biases within our religious aspects of life that creates all these biases, and by acknowledging not just us openly naming those religious influence, not just talking about the influences, but we're going to critically talk about acknowledging the impact of religion on biases is crucial. And by naming these influences, communities can foster greater awareness and encourage dialogue, ultimately working towards unity and understanding in diverse contexts. Because the whole idea of it is to bring about unity, is to use this concept in creating unity and change the narration and change the way we talk and the conversations that we have around these three key concepts. Becoming accountable accountability in our faith, becoming accountable in our faith, either your Christian stewardship, either our Islamic justice, either African communal harmony, because in each of these religions, there are key things that drives the way the way they operate. Those key things that drives how it is being positioned, how it operates. So in Christian, it's about stewardship. Christian teachings emphasize stewardship as a call to care for others and the environment, while Islamic principles advocate for justice and equity, guiding followers towards accountabilities in action. Then the African communal harmony traditions within African communal harmony emphasizes communal harmony. It talks about communal harmony, fostering a culture of mutual accountability and support. So every aspect of our religious life, every aspect of our religious life, they all preach one thing, they all advocate for one thing, and what they advocate for, they all have different, they all talk about accountability in terms of being accountable for our decisions and our actions that we take. And these are the things you see across the different type of faiths or religion that we hold. They all talk about this. They all emphasize the importance of accountability, and those are kind of the three key principles in which some of the principles we are laying down. So when we're talking about awareness, when the moment you become aware of your prejudice and of your biases, then take the next step of being accountable. Being accountable. So what we are saying is that all those aspects of our lives that determines that takes the way our life flourish, and religion being one of them. That it doesn't matter what kind of a religion you are, or what type of religion you practice. We are saying that that's what I'm trying to the concept I'm trying to share in this conversation is that every single religion, every single one of them talks about accountability. So, how do we use this to change our society? Because we all have different religion, but if we all take note of the key principles that guides those religion and apply it in our community, then it becomes meaningful. Then it changes the way we see the world we live in. It changes the way we engage with each other, and it changes the interpretation of what we see that evolves in our society. And they all, from what those tricky religions that I've used as a sample: Christianity, Islamic, and the African spirituality, they all talk about being accountable the key principles. It's all about being accountable. So how do we hold individuals accountable? How do we hold individuals accountable? Because faith traditions instill a sense of responsibility in individuals. The individuals are the one that makes up the community. So how do we make this individual accountable? Encouraging them to confront their biases within themselves and their communities. Within themselves first and their community. This accountability foster inclusive practice that promotes unity and understanding. And this is what we want to see. This is what we want to see. Action, and then after that, then for them taking actionable steps for inclusive practice. So yes, now they are aware of their biases and prejudice. They understand to become, as individual, to become accountable, and they're taking those steps to become accountable, and then taking actionable steps for inclusive practice. So it's okay to be accountable. It's okay to become aware. We want you to move a bit step forward by taking actionable step for inclusive practice and putting this into practice. And then that is when it becomes um of any good to the community, when we now take actionable steps, practical actionable steps. We form collaboration across religion lines. We're talking about, okay, forming these collaborations across religious line. Building inclusive community requires intention. You have to be intentional. You have to be intentional. For you to take any form of actionable step, for you to do anything, for you to form collaboration, you have to take steps, and those steps has to be intentional, because you're going to go out of your way to be intentional. You have to go out of your way to be intentional in making those decisions. Among the diverse faith groups, engaging in shared celebrations and dialogue. We share you celebrate together, you dialogue, and that fosters understanding, unity, and respect across different religion, traditions, and culture. Celebrate every culture. Get to know about your culture. Make time, make room to foster the collaborations that make the big difference. Use evidence-based of a base impact of conscious bias. And let's see those evidence-based impacts of conscious bias. We said be actionable, take actionable steps. So what are you doing? What step are you taking? Research indicates that implementing conscious bias framework in community leads to improved social cohesion. If this becomes practicable in our society, our evidence base has shown us that the impact in our community improve our social cohesion, reduce discrimination, and enhance accountability in policies, forces, environments where diverse voices are worked and heard, are valued and heard, in every way. That is valued. So these are parts of what we hope we can take, said it, make it an evident base, make it impactful. Let's see what is it that you're talking about? What does the future holds when it comes to it? Now, recently I engaged in a transformative educational course, and while this framework was being created, I realized that when there's a change, when this change, when we see this evidence change, when we become practical in taking actions to change and to embrace our biases and prejudice and worked on it, then we transform our community. So we use the transformative community stories. We use these stories, this personal narrative illustrates the positive impact that we see. So let's use our personal narrative to illustrate positive impact of Susanna conscious bias framework, of my framework, showcasing how faith informed action, showcasing it in every way, how faith informed action, a faith informed action have foster unity, understanding, and social transformation within the vast community where you have different people from different religious background taking an intentional step on coming from different religious bases background and forming this collaboration, doing things and then sharing what you've done, turning it into a transformative community stories that you can share So in this framework, we have what is called the county reach PPN registration. So I'm going to give you more information on what this means within this framework, what PPN means within the framework of what it means within the framework of the conscious bias. So it intends to be active action, multiple the multiple counties promoting collaborations and inclusivities around our counties. And what that means is perceptual preference node. Perceptual. So when I talk about the PPN registration within the counties, that these frameworks are being done and be used within all the counties. And then talking about perpetual preference node, that is the enhancing legitimacy, fostering partnership, and enabling us to achieve national recognition and grant readiness so that we can this can be fostered, this can be this framework can be used in our counties, used to make changes, and used in different ways, um, to make changes within the communities that we have. So just this just us is just an illustration, and I hope you can see what this illustration means. Just an illustration to show how far this will go within the counties, where we want to reach, and how this will become usable and useful within our community. So, like I said, I'm just going to run us through this. So, the perpetual preference node, the PPN registration means perpetual preference norms. These are part of the conceptual framework for the conscious bias. So this is more will be more usable within the community, and all these frameworks will be given out when we go around the counties to promote the conscious bias framework. A perpetual element highlighting how reality is filtered, not received objectively. A preference element reflect the direction tied causes by various emotions, memories, and identity when we go down our cultural lane and the cultural foundation that where we get all our biases and prejudice. A node represents a decision junction. So this is where after going to audio, whenever we make a decision to take into action our accountability where that we've recognized, and then putting into action, doing something actionable, an actionable change, really making a positive change, and becoming active rather than Latin. So having a functional definition, the moment of the conscious engagement where the biases becomes actionable. Remember, awareness, accountability, and then becoming actionable, shaping the interpretation, reaction, and decision making while the individuals remain aware, or the influence that their decisions or actions means within the community. Um, what are the key characteristics we want to see? A conscious, accessible, unlike impact bias. Um, we want to be able to we wait, we integrate, observed. That's what the first aspect of it means, the awareness, and then the contents, the sensitivities around to activate different depending on the environment, the stakeholders, the emotional load, and then modifiable through reflection, reframing the biases at and can be scanned, redirected, or that is when we say you make it actionable, you take an actionable step, a changeable step that make a change and make a difference. So um going back to the what we've been saying and with regards to this, so the whole idea is about how you embrace. What we want to do is to figure out how the community will embrace the conscious bias framework, and just let this be reflected in your policies, in the decisions that you are making. Let it make take a prominent role within our community. Embrace the conscious bias framework. So embrace it by adopting this conscious bias framework within your policy. We can foster unity, promote understanding, and create inclusive spaces where diverse communities thrive through collaborative effort and shared value. So we want this framework to be used within our policies, making decision making for leaders in our churches, in our communities, in our homes, in our workplaces. Making use of the framework to redefine how we see the world today, how we see our world today, to redefine how we see our world today. So, what are the steps that you're taking? Let's have a comprehensive list of sources and partners now. So, uh, we have the Susuana Conscious Bias Framework. We have our research and findings and applications. We have a good framework that we can use give to you to use within your places of work. We have the role of religion, the role of race, the role of gender in communities, cohesion, a literature review, religious leaders, statements on accountabilities, imbalances, statistic or social integration from faith-based initiative, successful cases studies of interfaith cooperation, partners with organization, Faith in Action Network, Interfaith Alliance, Community Bridge Builders, a Global Religious Leaders Forum, acknowledgements, contributions, and collaboration research to implement the framework. And these will help us in making sure that we can implement this framework, and how this framework will now um, become circulating in a way that it's become effective within our community, and how we use it. So this is really very important, um, very important key kind of framework that will be used, um, and just starting from that consciousness, we starting from that consciousness is what we're talking about. How this becomes played out in our community. How do we play this out? So we've talked about the impact of conscious bias. We will continue to talk about the impact of conscious bias within our community. We'll continue to create different frameworks that can be used to bring to life the idea of this conscious bias, the pioneering of this conscious bias, the ideology and the concept that we want to see in our community. We're also going to move forward to talking about the consequences of these biases, and how this goes, but how do we recognize these conscious bias in our community? How do we recognize the consequence, and the how does the research perception, how is it changing, and how is people, driving people into the mitigation of conscious bias strategy, creating strategies, using these within our policy changes, inductions, accountability, open to dialogue, creating room for dialogues in different aspects. So creating an inclusivity in our community through using this framework of conscious bias, this name framework that allows us to, you know, really own on to our own biases and prejudice, and just not that, become accountable, and not only become accountable, recognize this, and create an actionable impact with that. Yeah. So I'm going to quickly see what is it that people are talking about, and what is it that we are, um what is the conversation around this conscious bias framework, and how does this really work for us as a community? How are we embracing it? So it can be very daunting. So I'm going to put up a question. So I'm going to talk about, um so when I was, we're talking about the conscious bias framework, which is being pioneered and designed by myself. This is an ideology and a concept that I believe could change the way we see diversity within our community, the way we see equitable, and the way we see inclusion, and what inclusion really means to us individually. How do we see what is inclusion? How do we define our inclusion? How do we define inclusion? We defining that in the concept of a conscious bias ideology. So, that conscious bias is a strategy for cultural center design. Is And the framework that we are creating, that we transform biases from an unconscious reactive problem into an intentional, because we're talk saying you have to be intentional. That's what I'm trying to say with this concept of framework. You have to be intentional. You have to be intentional. You have to be proactive, using a proactive tool for building equity and innovation. Unlike our the whole traditional kind of biases, which is about mitigation. What we are saying now is to be intentional, become actionable. which seek to minimize prejudice. We don't want you to minimize it because it does exist. It's part of the foundation of our cultural life. So conscious bias, active creates, act is talking about being actively creates and architect cultural frameworks into system. So conscious bias is saying, and what I'm saying with this conscious bias is that it will actively create and architect the cultural frameworks into systems, process, and leadership practice to create an inclusive ecosystem by design. So, an inclusive ecosystem whereby no one is out of, is everyone is involved and everyone individually is seen. Nobody is isolated because everybody, when you say being inclusive, is meaning everyone in this concept means every one of us is part of it. Nobody is taken aside. No religion, no faith, no gender, nothing is less. We are all working at within an equitable accountability, actionable steps. That's what we are doing. And that is the kind of practice and leadership we want to see that is being designed. So I'm saying that this breakthrough lies in reframing the entire conversations around conscious bias. I want us to reframe it. And the framework comes with three pillars, which talks about cultural operating system. It talks about, that's one of it, the cultural operating system. And what I'm saying there is that as we redesign this framework and we design these conversations that we're talking about, that we should be consciously aware of what our environment, what it entails within our environment, that and that this spiritual light, by reframing the entire conversation, we are trying to change the conversation. And in order to change the conversation, we have to really reframe how the conversation on conscious bias is being seen. How do we present it? And that is what we're saying, that we are aware of it, that these exist, and we're taking accountability, but not just going beyond being accountable. We're taking a step forward to become actionable and making an impactful, actionable change that can be seen, taking actions that can be seen, and putting those into practice and making sure that it becomes meaningful within our community, within our society, and the way we see things we do. And this is what we are saying. So I hope as you join me in this conversation, and as you join me along with this dialogue on this conscious bias framework, we understand, we embrace this framework. Not only do we embrace the framework, we also become recognize the perceptual preference nodes that is within the registry, the framework that we are going to be using. Understand the meaning and how these will work. You know, allowing our stories, our transformative stories within our community that is being shared, to for us to allow these to be seen and to be heard, and to use those transformative stories to make those changes. Use our evidence-based impact, evidence-based uh, stories or research that we've done. How impactful? How does it become impactful through of this conscious bias, the impact it's making in our society? Let's create a collaboration across our faith, our gender, and our race. Let's have this collaboration across that we can say it's useful, taking actionable step for inclusive practice, become very actionable as we take the step, and as either as individual or as corporate organization. How are we becoming accountable within our biases and prejudice that we have? How do we become accountable in those areas? So yeah, so this is what the conversation is about. And I believe that as we come on board, as we become part of this conversation, as we become part of the stories, as we join in using region as a builder, in creating this consciousness framework that we're talking about, that we can become more um, accountable in our stories and the way we share a story. Yeah. So I'll be looking forward to your comments. I'll look forward to you joining us later on and sharing some of your objectives. So for those of you that are joining again for the first time and you've not been on my YouTube channel, it's Susanna on the Move. This is an opportunity for you to subscribe to the channel, click like this presentation, subscribes as well. And if you're watching on LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn. Click on the follow link and I'll be able to accept it. Follow me and let's have more conversation. Share this with other people around you, people you think would be of interest to. Try and share it with them. And then let's know what you're thinking. Are what is your contribution to this? Do you agree with the framework? Do you buy with the concept or the ideology? It's an open conversation and we want to see how we all react to this. So thank you very much for joining me. Again, it's your host, Susuana Olatunji Komolafe, on Susanna on the Move. And as we continue to talk about the Susanna Conscious Bias Framework, and these we continue. And then join us. This is the 17th episode. So join us as in each of the episodes. You can go back on our YouTube to review and to just go through some of these episodes that has been shared already. So thank you very much for this. Good night.